The following is an excerpt of the teachings of the Death Defier Chapter 4, titled Changing the Past. Please note that in this audiobook the corresponding exercises are not included.
We have come to the end of our limits, and broken beyond them. We have pushed down the walls that hindered us, and we have come to realize the strength that lies within. I am Guadalupe, I am Ocelot, the black jaguar.
I sat in the cool night under contrasting heat from the burning twigs before me as I watched Guadalupe lead the rest of the younger ones to their rooms, carrying a little girl who had fallen asleep and lay still on her shoulder. She really did seem to care for everyone nonetheless and always took up the instinctive motherly role more often than not. The crackle from the flames caught my attention as I watched little sparks fly from an exploded branch. Pushing the rest of the dry sticks around into the flames, I rekindled the fire as it rose happily and satisfied. I smiled. Guadalupe said, "You admire the flames so much, what exactly do you see?" I looked up to Guadalupe, who held a bunch of wild berries as she settled beside me. "It marvels me," I responded, still poking at the twigs and watching them burn to ash. And she said, "They are truly a wonder, so ready to consume." I added, completing her statement, never getting satisfied. Then I turned to look in her eyes as the light danced on her face, giving her skin a yellow glow, and her smile even stood brighter in the hidden shadows. "Here, help yourself," she said, placing the berries between us and threw a few into her mouth. I did likewise and squeezed my face at the burst of sour juice. She laughed. Managing to swallow, my mind flashed back to the other night in the cave. We hadn't talked about that night since we returned days ago, neither did she act like anything had happened, or did she become any more attached to me than the others, and it ate me up. I had searched for a good time to talk about it, but it never did present itself, so I was moved to speak. "Do you ever wish to go back in time?" I asked. She lifted her eyes and met mine, saying, "Like time travel?" "Yes, like time travel." I threw more berries into my mouth. It was beginning to taste less sour as I ate on. "There is no need for wishes, I do time travel," she said rather casually, and I almost didn't accept she had spoken until she spoke on. "It's quite basic, some intent and willingness, and we'd travel to whatever year your mind can fathom." "So you are saying I could witness the day I was birthed?" "I'm saying you could choose to see whatever your mind can fathom," she replied with a smile. I sat in curiosity as she stood up, signaling she'd be back, and hurried yet again to the temple and back, this time with a basket. She flipped the lid open and took out little clay pots, all with colored powder. She lined them perfectly as she knelt by the fire. I gazed upon her, and she took little notice of my confusion or chose to pay no regard, and so I stayed watching quietly. As though in a trance, she began muttering words. It wasn't anything comprehensible, yet it was clear and audible, a definite language, but definitely not one I was familiar with. Her lips moved rapidly as though drunk with wine. Dipping her hands into the little pots before her, she scooped out the powders and threw them in little sprays into the fire as the flames came alive, even more alive than before. The sight forced me to slowly crawl back when her voice came, saying, "Stay. You should stay." Her eyes were bloodshot as she now sat, legs folded under her. She chanted some more, and the air around suddenly went chilly as the skies appeared darker. I felt goosebumps rise on my skin as it crawled with slight worry. She threw in more of the color dust into the fire, and with each dust, a corresponding flame color roared. Red, blue, green, and suddenly it went dark. "Hello," I called out, "Guadalupe, are you there?" I was visibly shaking at this moment. Dark magic was all I could process in my head. "Run, run," I heard my thoughts telling myself, but my butt stayed glued to the ground. Suddenly, foggy blue luminescence rose from the spot of the fire with Guadalupe on the other side. Her eye color had returned to normal, as she now breathed easily. "Don't be afraid," she said, "it just takes more than wishing to see the past, let alone change it." Her words came in waves, as I struggled to piece them together. It was as though I had been hallucinating, and I saw her get up and glide towards me, her feet not touching the ground. She held her hand and I subconsciously took it and rose to meet her face. "Brace yourself," she said, stroking my assemblage point, and there was an immediate rush. The air seemed to hit my face with intensity, yet I didn't seem to be moving. Guadalupe still holding onto my hand as though I would stray if she let go just a moment. Soon we were in familiar territory. The air smelt a certain damp and the room stuffy. I looked around, scanning the entire room for understanding. We had clearly left Guatemala, but this place we had arrived, this oddly familiar room brought a sense of welcome and nervousness. Just then my eyes settled on a bottle by the window. In it stood a dying flower in water halfway, and immediately it struck me. The feeling of home, the familiar smell, this was my home, and this was my mother's room, well over 10 years ago. We were really here, I thought to myself in absolute awe and amazement. I was lost for words. I walked around the room trying to recollect the memories of time past from each object. Just then I saw my mother's green book filled with tales she would tell me and my sister to sleep. I tried to pick it up and my fingers simply went through it. "What's happening? Am I dead? Did we die?" I asked. "Dead? Not at all. The powers that we use come from our double, and the more we can control it, the more power we have." "You mean like the astral body?" "Exactly, but if you want to change anything in the past, we are going to have to make the double conscious, to do so." "Well, that's easy. I can recall the awareness of my younger me." "Not necessarily. The double can take any shape." "Any shape?" "Yes, but you should understand by now how hard it is to control our double, and the amount of energy it takes." I made to leave and her voice stopped me. "Where are you going?" Jokingly I asked, "Do you have a teleportation spell perhaps, that could ease a journey?" "I do. But unfortunately I can't use any magic in astral form till we make our doubles conscious, but we can sort of fly and move through objects, more like in dreams." She took my hands and led us through the thin walls of my mother's room, and suddenly we were outside the house, floating just slightly above the rooftops. It was like riding a hot air balloon, except in this case we were the balloon. No one could see us as we were glided above the city, roof to roof. It was exciting. I had never felt more alive. I could feel the wind, and it almost felt like I was part of it. We finally got to the lonely white house at the end of a long street paved with large grey stones. "All right, let's go up there and, Pablo, be careful transferring awareness to the double. You don't want to have a consciousness tussle." "How do I know exactly what is right?" I asked, a bit nervous. "Just let your instincts guide." My instinct told me that was very difficult to imagine a new kind of awareness from scratches, but the easy way was simply to copy my own body awareness by evoking it. So I did. "Pablo," I heard my name in a different voice, but I knew it had to be Guadalupe, and I saw this young beautiful lady with dark hair and a busty front side. I feel like she almost picked out this astral body shape on purpose, to bewitch me. I was done rather quickly. Making the double conscious and transferring awareness to it was easier than I thought. It was then a question of what to do next. We certainly did need a place to go, as the sun had almost vanished from the sky and the day was fast getting dark. "I know a man just at the outskirts of town, who owned a shard he rented out to people for free in exchange for labor on his farm. Let's head there." And so we journeyed out of the town. Suddenly I stopped. I began seeing my sister. I could see her crying and sitting just outside the playground of the only preschool in the town, and so I approached her. "Hi Betty, what's wrong?" She looked up at me with a slight dread in her face, but covered more by hurt. "Who are you?" she asked, "and how do you know my name?" "I was a friend of your father, been away for a while, I just got back to town today. You won't remember me. How's your brother Pablo?" "He's fine," said, still confused as to who I was. And so I sat down right next to her with Guadalupe staring at me just across. I think she understood I needed to have this conversation, and made herself comfortable sitting on the fence. "Where is he, and why are you out here so late crying?" "I don't know, I ran away," she said, breaking into more tears. "Why? I looked over at Guadalupe, who listened keenly. My boyfriend died not too long ago, and he was everything to me, but I felt I could withstand this pain, cause after all I had my brother, but he's always busy, like absent since my boyfriend passing. It's almost like he's dead too. I looked down at her and realized for the first time how lonely she must have felt. I felt tears form in my astral eyes and I spoke, mustering the strength. You know, I lost my dad, and somehow my sister too when I was younger. You did? She looked at me with widened eyes. Yes, I did, and I feel bad about it every day because it felt like I was the one who killed my sister. What do you mean? She had stopped sobbing by then. She was feeling so much pain just like the one you are feeling now, and I couldn't bring myself to think outside my own drama to be a big brother to her, and so I pushed her away to the wrong company, and let's just say something happens and she was gone from my life. I felt broken. She had also left in this world me all alone, and it was then I realized too late how much I loved and cherished her, even more than our mother, and honestly if I could go back in time and save one person, I would choose her every time. Do you think my brother feels the same way about me? Betty asked. I'm damn right sure he does. Even if you can't see this now, if you love him, don't leave him. Trust me, that would break him. She broke into a giggle and snuffed. Even with her wet eyes it made my heart warm with pleasure, as I smiled back at her with satisfaction. Now, that's a smile worth dying for. You stay safe, okay? I whispered. Thank you, she said. If you ever hungry, do stop by to visit. My mum taught me her recipe for the best pottage in the world. I laughed, knowing we both couldn't make the pottage good enough to be eaten. I will certainly take you up on your offer, I said. She jumped up with so much energy and joy, and back towards home. I gradually got up and moved toward Guadalupe. That was your sister, right? Guadalupe asked. Yeah, she was. I held a satisfying smile. She looks just like you, just better looking though. Very funny, I replied, adding, you don't know, but I once was crowned most handsome in middle school. Not surprised there. From what I have seen so far, the competition is slim, she said, and I laugh and tap her on the shoulder. While heading back on the path out of town to the old man's farm, people didn't come to the old man's farm much except when they were extremely desperate. Most people believed him to be some sort of sorcerer and conjurer, and so they easily avoided him. Rumors also said he had lived there for as long as the town had existed, but that didn't stop them from buying his potatoes. That was the biggest and freshest in the town, some would even say the sweetest. We finally got there. I was really starting to enjoy this astral traveling. I could hear some whistling from the other side nearing closer. Good evening, sir, we said to the elderly man before us, wondering if he was aware of us coming in the astral form. He sized us up and smiled, saying, oh, boy, your double is powerful. And who might you be, young lady? The old man asked. In Quetzaltenango, Guadalupe said. I wasn't very versed in it, but she was speaking the ancient tongue for the shaman, known today as Quiche. I tapped her shoulder, wondering what had gotten into her. Latsa what? The old man replied. I was shocked. Was it possible all those years the town was right about the old man and I didn't know, or rather chose not to believe? Then he spoke. I see you both are not from around here. Time travel is a very powerful magic. We bring no trouble, sir, just need a safe astral place to stay while we are here, I said. Somehow I believe you, but your lady friend here seems like a troublemaker. But I guess I can't turn away those that speak the ancient tongue. Just know that this town is under my protection. We understand, thank you, sir. We moved off, as I dragged Guadalupe, who was still locking a strange gaze with the old man. Then I said, I can't believe he was or is a shaman. I occasionally worked on this farm all through my childhood and I couldn't sense anything amiss. He's a very powerful one, Guadalupe said. He's a three-forked Nagual, and older than he looks. I could sense ancient magic in him. And I replied, now that you mention it, nobody ever knew when he moved into town. He had just always been around. And added, I don't like this, sharing an astral layer with a sorcerer we don't even know. Who, this old man? He is a good man, trust me, I know. Really? You didn't even know him up until some minutes ago, so pardon my doubt. Well, good point, but still we are going to be okay as long as we are together. Now I don't know about you, but I need to recharge my double. She nodded slightly and so went back to the house, where he was already setting a circle of power. I waited for him to open the circle and enter it, and I followed, with Guadalupe taking her time, rather seeming uninterested. So what year did you folks come from? The old man asked. Approximately 10 years from now, I replied. Why did you decide to settle here? Guadalupe asked, looking straight into his eyes. What makes you think I decided to settle here? He laughed. What does that even mean? She said. What's wrong, Guadalupe? I asked. She turned and looked at me intensely and without words flew me to the barn, then she pulled me closer, and hugged me. Taken aback, I pulled away but she resisted and kept on hugging me. Take me, she whispered as she bit my astral earlobe. Let's do it. I heard that astral sex is an amazing experience. I felt ignited. I took her, we were weightless, like levitating. I flipped her over and we began making love as she let out an intense loud moan. Her moans resonating nothing but absolute pleasure. I went on even harder on her, just to hear her moan even louder. After, she mumbled some words sounding like, I think I love you, and then a silence ensued. What? I said to her, still trying to recover from the experience. Never mind, she replied, snuggling into me deeper for a hug. Soon after she lost some awareness of her astral body, and I followed not long afterward. 2 hours or so later, I recovered full astral awareness, frightened by Guadalupe vigorously shaking and bleeding through her nostrils. I didn't know the double can bleed. Confused, not knowing what to do, I transported her to the old man, hoping he would know what to do about it. I shouted and called to him for help as I laid her astral body on the floor. He came out soon enough. Bring her to my ritual room, hurry. The old man shouted. He opened a brown box and brought out some kind of blue potions and gave it to her. Her shaking came to an end, with a sudden jerk and long stretch, before she became calm and at peace. He packed up and said, we must leave her now to rest in the circle of power. We both headed to the circle and placed her beautiful astral body in the center. Then I asked, worried, what was that? I guess you don't know much about dangers in astral traveling, he said. I shrugged, signaling I knew nothing. You see, your friend went through what we would call a gash. A gash? Yes, when the double tries to leave the body without reintegration because somebody else is trying to steal its energy. I'm guessing someone sensed the power your lover friend possessed, and that was what attacked her. But she says my double is even stronger than hers, so why wasn't I attacked then? Well, some have theirs naturally protected and hidden. I guess that's your case, but your friend is oozing hers. I suggest you do whatever you came back here to do fast and head back before she gets herself killed, and you have little time before more will come for her, and she may not be recovered enough to resist more. The old man said with a rather dramatic voice. Then my thoughts wander, trying to understand what made her want to go this far for me, knowing the risks and yet not bother to tell me. It then replayed in my head the words she loosely spoke last night, words about loving me. It seemed rather sudden, and although I hadn't really sat or paused to think about it, more at this point my answer was obvious. I loved her, too. Suddenly, the old man said, as soon she's recovered, you must go. There was nothing more I could do but wait till she's strong enough to take the astral journey back to Guatemala. How long is she going to be like that for? I asked him. Until she gets back the powers she has lost. She's a fighter, so I'm guessing till this evening. So I said, I will be heading to town. Taking your advice, I need to hurry things up and get her out of here. I then headed back to my old home. On getting to the door I saw myself, I was taken adrift. Mister, the distant voice called and I was drawn back. Are you okay, mister? The younger me asked. Oh yes I am, I'm looking for your sister, she invited me for some pottage, the best in town I heard. Oh she did? Well she's not in, he said and I sensed he wasn't ready to welcome me. Mind if I come in? I asked and without waiting for a reply I came in anyway. I went up straight to my room and he followed right after me, in fury. Now mister, I don't know what you are on about, but you need to leave right now. I smile at the young courageous me. I pulled a piece of wood in between the crack of the bed and brought out my black book. I used to have one of this when I was younger. I used to write about all sort of magic I could think of. The first magic I wanted to learn and wrote down was the magic to share memories. I stared at him or rather myself and I could see the shock in his eyes. You know I lost my mother also, and when she died I felt responsible and powerful that I couldn't save her. It was then I decided if any kind of magic existed out there I would find it one day. I was so centered on what I lost that I ended up losing what I had. How did you know that? Who are you? Fear and anger laced his tone at the same time. I can't tell you that, but what I can do is to show you. So struck his assemblage point and forced him to remember, and showed him all he needed to know. Tears dropped down his eyes. At that point I knew that he understood what he needed to do. I was at peace, there was nothing more to be said or done, and so I left. Heading back to get Guadalupe out of this timeline as fast as I could, when I ran into my little sister. Hey mister. She said to me, I'd like to ask you something. But I said, I'm sorry I have to leave. I notice her astral face wrinkle into a frown, my heart broke and I realized then what could be done, so I took her off to the side, beside an alley, and gently tapped her assemblage point. She hugged me tightly, I let myself enjoy it a while before I pulled her back. And said, remember to never leave your brother alone, to never give up on me, we are stronger together, we always have been. We always will. She nods her head in agreement, and as I waved goodbye to my dear sister, I got back to Guadalupe. She was almost recovered. I rushed to her side to support her, kissing and hugging her all over, in relief, saying, I thought I lost you, and I need to tell you something I should have said yesterday. No, I need to tell you something first, she said. I lied to you. I have never traveled this long with somebody in the astral plane before. I put a line of energy on you to channel your energy. I came with because I wanted to help you. I also wanted to find out if I could stay back in time long enough if I channeled your energy, and that's why the gash happened. I'm so sorry for using you. I know, Guadalupe, that you were drawing energy from me. I felt it, but that's what I wanted to say. It doesn't matter. When the gash happened I could have undone the assemblage point to its original position, but I still wanted to hurry up and save my sister. I was selfish, and I think there's nothing wrong when we are a little selfish for the ones we love, and I have also came to realize that I want to be selfish with you also. I love you too, Guadalupe, whether I'm in this double body or in another timeline. I love you and my energy is yours now. I am yours. She cried and buried her heads into my chest. I raised her head up and kissed her. Then, the old man seemed to have materialized out of thin air, saying, I guess both of you would be leaving now. But there is one more thing we need to do. What? I asked. I'm going to need to borrow some of your energy. Please, allow me. Suddenly, then old man and began to glow weirdly and asked, how did you know I'm a Nagual? His voice got deeper as he began to glow even brighter. Because my mother once told me the story about an immortal man, looking just like you. Suddenly, he rushes to embrace Guadalupe, and they both let out their emotions. I could see the relief on Guadalupe's face. It was like two old soul friends meeting again. I could tell this was something she had held on to for a long time now. Thank you were the old man's last words. We were transported back to Guatemala in a split second, back to the fire, now glowing orange. We looked at each other's eyes, and I said, so what do we do now? And she replied, you wanted to astral travel to the past because you had something you wanted to change, and you did. Yes, I said with satisfaction, remembering my sister. Then she whispered, "So I guess it's time for another adventure, are you ready?" And I whispered back, "Yes. As long as we are in this together." She said with assurance,
"Together, always. For I am Ocelot, the black jaguar."